Hello and welcome to the Phil and Simon Show number 45. My name is Simon Minty.
And my name is Phil Friend.
We're in, we think, week 5 of our shows, but we've had a 3-week lockdown renewed just the other day by the UK government. And I don't know about you chaps, but yesterday, which was Monday, was just a really tough day. Quite a few people I know really struggled with it.
Mondays traditionally are not a great day for many people. I suppose in this situation it's even worse. I can't say I felt that different really, if I'm being really honest, but I know you did. What about you, Jeff? Were you bouncing around?
No, yesterday was a tough day. I didn't sleep well. My stomach was upset. Just the whole world seemed a bit wrong.
Oh dear. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you two guys are feeling a bit like that. Are you better today, shall we say?
Much better. Had a
Oh,
really good
good.
sleep.
Good. Jeff, let's kick off, shall we, as we always do with your sort of news roundup. What's on your agenda today?
What caught my eye was a leaked letter to The Guardian from the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services saying that more people may be dying from coronavirus in care homes and in the community than in hospitals. What they're basically saying is that the Department of Health is putting everything into the NHS and treating care homes and social care in the community very much as a Cinderella service, and therefore it's not getting the attention and the resources and things like the PPE that it wants. The Department of Health have responded, and they said on Saturday, Matt Hancock has announced a new social care strategy, including making testing available for all care staff and residents. But you can see that those tensions are still there. Already, we've got problems with getting the right sort of equipment into hospitals. We've seen the whole fiasco over all the gowns that were supposed to come from Turkey and they didn't. And then the RAF had to send a plane to go and pick them up. I think what the directors of adult social care are saying is that if you think it's bad in the NHS, what about our service? That's even worse.
Yeah. There's been, I know there's been a serious amount of disquiet from disabled people themselves, and we mustn't forget that although the numbers have gone down over the last few years, there are still a lot of severely disabled people reliant on residential settings for their support and care. And what you're flagging up is really seriously concerning, I'm guessing, for them. I mean, it seems to me that the task for the social care brings local authorities into play, and there are many, many more residential care settings than there are hospitals, I'm guessing, and they're scattered about and they're small. Logistics must be a nightmare.
And there are even more people, let's say, in the community, people like me and older people who have people coming in once or twice a day to help them. But, that sort of support needs to go on because without it, people will not survive. They will certainly not thrive and they will potentially not survive this pandemic.
I think there's a couple of bits that come out in your story for me, Jeff. One is this sort of weird bit which I'm reading where people kind of go, "Oh, people are dying all any time. There's not more deaths than there would be normally," and it's almost like this death statistics that we need to bump up. I even saw something today saying, the overall deaths are way much higher now, but it's not all down to corona. And you're thinking, goodness me, we're in a very weird world where we're trying to. I mean, my point is, it's not actually about the pure numbers; it's about how many we're not who are going to die if we hadn't done what we're doing. I read somewhere, you're right, Phil, there's thousands of care homes, 80% of them being private. Now, is it that they get money from local authorities to fund, but they are actually private? And do you think that's played into this?
Well, I think the model is that local authorities buy the placement, don't they? So if you live in a residential care setting, the local authority pays maybe all or part of the fees for that. For many residential settings, they have a social work interest. There may be a social worker attached as well. But it is about profit at the end of the day. Inspection has been cut. Before all this crisis, there were a number of worries, were there not, about people with severe learning disabilities in large institutions exposing the abuse that was going on. Now, please, I'm not suggesting that's what's going on now, but there are real worries about how residential settings are able to care for people. And in this moment, in this crisis, it must be much worse for them too. And their staff, their staff are at risk.
That's right. And without the correct equipment, those staff are at an unnecessarily higher risk than they would normally be.
I think he's right to write the letter. The sort of "what about me" is inevitable, but in this case, it has to be flagged up. And I think you're right, Jeff. That trickle on we've talked about before. There are a lot of people outside of hospital that need support, and those people who are given the support need the right kit and equipment as well.
Yeah. What's next, Jeff?
Well, a bit of a parish notice, really. The Women's and Equalities Select Committee would like to hear from you if you feel that you've had an impact from being in lockdown. People with protected characteristics they're talking about. You can put the link in the show notes, and people can read more about the call for information there. And if they feel that they've got a story to share with that particular parliamentary select committee, I would urge people to do that.
The impact on me has been having to do a radio show every week. Goodness me, it's been unbelievable, exhausting.
So much work, isn't it?
Just as a little headline, it says women inequalities. It's across all protected characteristics. For some reason, women have been identified as their own group in the title, but it's everyone, isn't it?
It is everybody. Yes, it is. Equally, a friend of mine pointed me to a sort of DNR, what you want to happen if you're taken into hospital and let's say you can't speak for yourself because you're in a coma or you're otherwise unable to communicate with the world. There's a thing that you can fill in. It says, who are you? Tell us 3 things about you. How do you like to be addressed? What do you want to happen? I would urge everybody to download this form, fill it in, send a copy to your nearest and dearest, and have a hard copy available in the house, because it's one of those things that will be a vital document if you're unable to communicate with paramedics when they come and help you.
Last week's guest, Lost Voice guy, should be doing a little campaign on that, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose the other thing is that what we know is that for many patients going into hospitals, they're on their own, aren't they? Their relatives are not allowed to go. So anything they can do before the dreadful event happens, if it does, is clearly good advice.
And I think you can get so overwhelmed in that moment, and when you're in hospital and there's all those expertise, to have clarity of thought beforehand to say what you want rather than suddenly having to think on the spot is, it sounds very sensible. But another link up there. We are being very public service this morning.
We are. Lastly, I was caught by an article in this online magazine, blog, whatever you want to call it, Medium, and they have 7 predictions for a post-virus world. So I just thought I'd run through them for you. They say, number 1, companies involved in digital services and e-commerce will make immediate but also lasting gains. They say, number 2, remote work will become the default. Number 3, many jobs will be automated and those that are not will become remote capable. Number 4, and this is very interesting, telemedicine will become the new norm. Now, this is interesting because it's something that the NHS has lagged behind in, and suddenly they found a reason to be able to Skype or Zoom your doctor because the doctor doesn't want to be infected and you don't want to be infected from your doctor's surgery. Number 5, higher education will move increasingly online. Number 6, goods and people will move with much more difficulty across international borders. Now, I was just saying before we started recording that maybe instead of going for your stag do in Prague or Krakow, maybe there'll be a renaissance for places like Brighton, Bournemouth, and Blackpool. That great British seaside revival that keeps being predicted. Number 7, after an initial period of isolationism, multilateral cooperation could well flourish, it says. Somebody needs to tell the President of the United States about that.
Yes. Well, I think, I love this list. I love lists like this. I love the idea that we're going to start thinking a little bit positively about the future and so on. I think what Simon and I want to do is do this justice, and perhaps we'll, spend a show on it when we're all out of lockdown or something, because this is worth talking about. I mean, one for me is, you touched on Krakow and stag do's, holidays, flying off to the Maldives and that kind of thing. Air travel is going to be very different, I suspect, and that kind of and people will have racked up debts. How are they going to afford all this stuff? I mean, what will it cost? So, interesting.
I think there's one line, a new word, remote capable. I've not come across that one before, but it makes sense in context. One, I think Phil is right. We should do a dedicated show, as in what's going to stick? What do we want to keep of all the changes? I think that'd be lovely as well. Talking about PPE, I was seeing a lot yesterday about manufacturing. Will some manufacturing come back to the UK? Because the fact that this has exposed a reliance on globalism, that's fine. But if we can't make anything and we're 6 weeks in and we're still running out of pretty basic things, have we got a problem with the lack of manufacturing capability?
Yeah, I mean, the first one you talked about, Jeff, companies involved in digital services. I mean, look at Zoom. They were kind of doing all right before all this, but now they're a sort of mega bucks company. And the thing that really, really I'm amazed by Zoom is that they've been able to adapt and change as they've gone along. So there were big worries about their security online and so on. They've done lots about that. This company have been seriously adept at adjusting to the new realities.
Yeah, they apparently they ramped up from 10 million users to 200 million in the space of a week or two.
It was a couple of months. It was about 3
Oh,
months.
was it 3 months?
But yeah,
Yeah.
December through. But yeah, our Parliament's just about to start using Zoom, so we're using it for the mother of all parliaments. Can you believe it?
I think Matt Hancock should go to Zoom and ask him if they could take over testing for us, and we might hit that 100,000 a month or whatever it was he's talking about. Jeff, we'll have to leave it there, won't we? But as always, it's a delight to have you, and thank you for what you're doing, digging out these stories, because they're really useful. I hope our listeners find them. And on the points about the future, listener, we'd love you to start thinking about what you think will stick and let us know, because that would be fascinating. So Jeff, thank you so much, as always.
You're very welcome. Have a good week. See you next week.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
We have a guest on the show who I'm very pleased to have. It's Dr. Frances Dockery. She's a consultant physician and geriatrician, which I had to practice to pronounce. Thanks for coming on the show, Frances.
Very welcome. Thank you for asking.
First question, I suppose, is what is it like for you currently at your hospital?
Well, you might have thought, oh, I'm so busy and I ran off my feet, but we are all bizarrely quieter than expected because we have split into COVID teams and non-COVID teams. That's a sensible approach. So the COVID teams consist of the respiratory and the infectious diseases specialists. We manage all the other ED stuff. So, for example, I'm on call today. I was on call last week, and it's incredibly quiet because people are so afraid to come to hospital. They are staying at home. So yes, and we have managed to discharge huge numbers of patients. Elective surgery has stopped, so there are far fewer inpatients. All our leave has cancelled, so there are more doctors around. But that's to allow for the very large number who are off because they've had COVID or have been in contact with a patient who turned out to have COVID later, So we've got a lot of staff absences. But yes, for certain teams within the acute frontline, it's very quiet, but we are very worried about how that's really going to take off in the weeks ahead, not just because of COVID, but the non-COVID pathology that's all sitting at home.
I've been reading bits where people who have non-COVID conditions and they're not coming in because they're a bit scared of it and so on, and I can see that. I mean, have you known anything like this before?
I don't think any practitioner has. It's incredible. Now, maybe those over in the Far East who are dealing with SARS and MERS, those would have. But an absolute pandemic, no. I mean, I was just looking, for example, the medical students in Galway in west of Ireland have graduated early. They're whooshing about now. That would have terrified me as a medical student. My God, the exams were brought forward 6 weeks. Anyway, so they've all done an online graduation ceremony, and they said it's the first time in 175 years they've ever had to do that. It's really interesting. I mean, there was a pandemic of the flu in 1918. You can't directly compare these things, but I don't think any of us have ever seen it in our lifetime. I think it'll have a lasting effect on all of us, not just medics, but everybody of our generation. It's quite incredible.
Do you think that I'm very struck by that we're now routinely, in my particular case at least, and my family, consulting our GPs at least by phone. We haven't got to video links and things like that, but it kind of works pretty well. You have 10 minutes conversation, and if they think there's something pretty unpleasant going on, they call you in, and if there isn't, they sort of reassure you and send you a prescription or something. But this idea that we'll go traipsing about backwards and forwards to the doctors. And I was also thinking about casualty. The fights on a Friday night in city centres must have stopped. And not that you probably see that with geriatrics, but I mean...
Well, you'd be surprised. You'd be very surprised. They're getting feistier and healthier in their older age. But Brilliant. I see all ages when I'm on call. But you're right, that's a big issue, the social behaviour. On the other hand, people are drinking a lot more at home. and let's say domestic violence rates are going up. They really are clearing the shelves of off license, I'm told. So you've got a different pattern of drinking going on. But sorry, the first point, you're absolutely right. Like, I'm used to doing virtual clinics in a hospital I worked in previously, and it took me, I'd say, maybe 3 months to actually get through the red tape of establishing virtual clinics where I am now in the department, just because of some people were doing them. Now the entire hospital are doing them, and they all think it's great. It's so efficient. Which it really is, and it frees up time to see other people. We still bring people in, but there are many lessons that we learn from this, and it will definitely change practice in so many ways. I mean, you do worry about the ill who are at home, but there are others who, as you say, were traipsing up to ED for the most minor thing. I mean, every ED will have its cohort of regulars who come in maybe 3-4 times a week, just for absolute, they enjoy looking around them. They'll tell you, some of them, just for a bit of drama, a bit of action. One lady, I remember well, her favourite programmes were Holby City and all the medical dramas, and she just loved it. And she used to always tell the ambulance drivers she had chest pain. And I was absolutely named as the biggest, I won't give you the expletives used on me because I sent her home. And then she used to hide her keys so she couldn't go home. Every department will have those characters. So those kind of people, the ambulance aren't bringing them for a start. And they're all really really very afraid. Not just older people, but all ages. So there is a worry about neglecting health, definitely. A huge concern, because when they do come in, they're pretty ill. But the usual worried well, like that lady I described, a lot of those are staying at home. And we're finding a lot more can be managed by telephone. So I think it'll have huge implications for how we do certain things.
It's the worry about prevention, things like screening, and also cancer treatments. We're reading in the paper, I don't know whether this comes across your desk, the idea that certain treatments for cancer, chemo and stuff like that are being put on hold. Is that happening where you are?
No, I mean, they are the one group who are continuing certainly with chemo, but the concern is, for example, surgery. Often you have chemo to shrink the size of a tumour before you have your surgery. The surgeries, I mean, the surgeons are there and willing, but the surgeries, it's not that they're not doing them. They are the one surgery that are continuing cancer surgeries. I can't really comment. Often it might be patient choice, to be honest, because if you start an immunosuppressive drug, which a lot of cancer drugs are, you are putting yourself at grave risk of infections. That might be the last thing you want to do for the sake of, well, who knows? People might have thought a few weeks, but actually it could be many months. So there's a lot of difficult decisions for people with oncologists and surgeons about the right timing here. You have to weigh up the risk of getting COVID and dying from it versus the risk of your cancer killing you if you don't proceed.
Talking of difficult decisions, as a sort of community, as disabled people, and sometimes we get concerned that sort of we might be seen as a medical problem. This is a long way of me saying, have you had to make any of these difficult decisions, such as who might get treatment or who might not? And what sort of support or guidance do you get in that circumstance?
Well, I haven't really, other than I do and have advocated for certain cases. Some man who came in under my general medical on call, he was 80, but he was good health. Otherwise, I had to ensure that his case, he was suspected COVID, but it wasn't an obvious case on the doorstep. So that's why he came under my watch, and then referred him to the COVID team. But I went personally to ensure that they had the clear picture of this man's life beforehand, because, otherwise you're making decisions of someone who looks, 80 years old with an oxygen mask. You're not going to look very, very well. So, I really went at length to ensure that information was conveyed very clearly, that this is the state of this man prior. He was extremely fit. Otherwise, there's no reason why he shouldn't. Biologically, he was very good. So I haven't had to make a lot of those decisions, but I'll tell you who have are people, for example, working in nursing homes. That's really, really the main focus now. It's emerging that really the vast majority of deaths are in nursing home residents, and it's heartbreaking, not just from COVID, but from non-COVID diseases. And that is extremely difficult. And it's not just, you're talking doctors and nurses here, and even, not just managing nurses and managerial roles, making those very difficult decisions in conjunction with families about whether or not they'll even convey them to a hospital, because the reality is they will do badly. So they're the difficult decisions. I haven't, other than ensuring I'd have to advocate for cases I believe will do well. Well, when I say well, it's very relative, because you can be fit and healthy. The statistics on survival after an ICU stay for COVID are very alarming.
Yeah, I suppose what's okay. I'm pleased that you haven't had to do it, but some people may have to do this. What sort of support and guidance are they getting? Is it
Like going back to, for example, as you say, if you're a disabled person of any age and you're in that terrible predicament as well, you need to kind of, well, you're banking on your relatives and your friends to ensure that your life prior and your abilities are conveyed very clearly. So that's an important point. Guidelines, there are guidelines out there. I know you might be aware of a NICE guideline that uses something called the Clinical Frailty Scale. I asked my own colleagues here about that, because it certainly was very concerning. It didn't specify an age, and the big concern about that is that is supposed to be done in the context of what's called CGA, which is a comprehensive geriatric assessment. It's a multimodal assessment of your health, in weeks prior. Whereas actually, in the wrong hands, people are just standing at the end of the bed and saying, "Oh, I'll give them a 5, I'll give them a 7." There could be a danger. In practice, from my respiratory and ID colleagues, are not really using that. They note the figure, but it's not really incorporated. They look at different scores about your physiological markers at that time, your blood pressure, oxygenation levels. They go more on that. They'll incorporate your pre-morbid function, but very much as a conversation with the family, rather than kind of relying on scores, which is a good thing, certainly. And it's something, if you are a disabled person, you can kind of take heart from, that you're not going to be written off because of a number.
Yeah, and it's the.
But I can't speak across the board. That's the experience here.
And I like the fact that it's a bigger picture. There's more taken into account, which is, I mean, Phil, you should talk about your OBE, and I'll talk about my Edinburgh show.
Exactly. If you're a VIP, it doesn't matter what kind of shocking condition you're in, you'll have a go.
What can we do that would both keep us safe and is there anything aside from what we get every day from the government about washing our hands and social distancing? Is there anything else we can do to increase our chances of maybe surviving if we were to get it or something?
I mean, even for medics, the evidence and information about it is changing daily. I mean, it is fascinating. It's just too new. And I think it's only when this pandemic is over people will realise. The latest is it can be carried on your shoes, for example, if you're talking about getting it in the first place. So we should all change our shoes at home. There's much more now on the asymptomatic carriage. You might even have had it already and not realise you've had it. Also, what's interesting is the ITU survival figures. For example, it's the UK, I can't remember the exact acronym for Intensive Care Society. They have a publication from about 3 or 4 days ago on the survival to date of intensive care unit patients with COVID. Now, obviously, there's about 2,500 still in intensive care. They've had 800 through who died, 800 who survived. And so far, they have said, I think, they've put a figure at about 2/3. If you're ill enough with COVID and you need intensive care, the mortality is about 66%. Versus if you're ill enough and need intensive care with any other type of viral pneumonia, and that's from historic data from a few years, the mortality is about 1/3. So you can see it's really pretty awful. So if you get it, there's not an awful lot you can do to change the course of it, really. There seems to be a very individual response, whether you're going to be an asymptomatic carrier or whether you're going to get the full-blown pneumonia, and your own immunological and maybe genetic factors trigger that. But just in terms of what we learn about it, they're now trying different strategies all the time, which will change that figure. They're finding that even though people have very low oxygen levels, they're finding now if they don't ventilate them in the same way, they don't need the same type of ventilation, the same tidal breaths as they do for viral pneumonias. So they're also changing the practice in how they ventilate them. And that too might affect mortality. So there's an awful lot changing. So I think the focus has to be on avoiding contracting it in the first place. And that's very difficult, and people are terrified and paranoid, but it's doable. You can at least avoid the high risk scenarios where you will. When you get it, you just have to kind of just trust the profession and ensure that your
comments, sort of suggest that our Prime Minister Boris Johnson was pretty lucky. given the mortality.
Well, yes. I believe, and it is news reports, that he didn't require full ventilation, where you've got a very high mortality. He required just a non-invasive ventilation, but yes, that's got quite if your pneumonia is of that severity, like the overall mortality is probably, I think, about 3%, which is still high. But if you actually are bad enough to need non-invasive, it's very high, much higher. And if you need full intubation, yes. So he was fortunate, but unfortunate.
I think this whole I said it was anything like this before. The fact this is so new to us, these decisions you got to make, the things that we're learning about this every day, something is slightly different. It is unlike anything we know.
Another thing is the phone, WhatsApp. I'm on a geriatrician's WhatsApp group. I'm on a medical cogwheel group, another internal one. And I mean, the phone is going non-stop, 7 days a week, all hours at night, with the latest articles being shared and updates and the national statistics, twice daily reports. It's gone crazy. And it's really interesting. And some very good things out of that side of just the sharing of information so rapidly. But as I say, let's hope that we're going to be able to keep up the enthusiasm and the momentum, because human beings, both in the medical and outside, would get bored, don't they? And the lockdown and the economic fallout, everything. It's not just the virus itself. The whole lot will have a terrible impact on people's mental health as well as their poverty levels. All of that are a big concern.
I knew it'd be great to speak to you. Thank you so much, Frances. I feel we should give you a round of applause like everyone does on the Thursday evening.
I'll tell you, as I say, it's quieter in some fronts, but I think our weeks ahead and months ahead will be extremely busy. Yeah, when the old surgeons get back doing their surgery that they've neglected to do, lots of things. Anyway.
Thank you for coming on, and thank you for the work that you do as well. We really appreciate it.
Not at all. Delighted. Good luck. See you, Phil. Bye. See you, Simon.
Bye. Our guest is Jamie and Lyon. Jamie is a senior research engineer at the BBC. He has a very engaging Twitter feed. I always enjoy reading them. He's also the host of 1800 Seconds, a podcast for the BBC, and he speaks about being autistic. And because of all the things I've just mentioned, he's our favourite guest so far, because he's making his own recording of this show. So we have an absolutely clean version of it. No other guest has offered that. So thank you very much, Jamie, and thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome. I love an excuse to set up my home studio. It's like, I've got a podcast to record. Let's build my pillow fort.
How are you getting on in lockdown times?
Oh, it's been a right ride. So in a way, like, there's an irony here in that the lockdown doesn't actually affect me all that much, because I'm autistic. I've been practicing social distancing since I was 3. So in many ways, the lockdown isn't the part that's caused me effect. The bit that's been effective is that my support routines have, of course, been disrupted, and it's my support routines that are the foundation of my stability and autonomy. So just to make it even more fun, one of the people who did support had already been ill for 2 weeks, so I was already on a half routine for about 3 weeks before the lockdown happened. And then when the lockdown happened, the main person doing my main routine with me every day, of course, could no longer travel. To roll back a little bit, I'm autistic, and the main way that affects me is that I get very muddled with things, and I find it very hard to remember to do things in the right order. Or I'm obsessive about doing things in exactly the order given. Either of the extremes, but generally speaking, I really benefit from having someone come visit me at home, help me with dinner, make sure I don't set the house on fire, and just generally help me run through an evening routine or a morning routine.
Phil's organisation, Research Institute for Disabled Consumers, did some research showing 50% of people who had some sort of support weren't getting it anymore. And it sounds like the reasons they weren't coming was the risk of transference, or they were ill, or why did they drop away?
So for one of them, it's because the lady herself is shielding, because she's 73. I'm very lucky that one of the people who do my support is an ex-naval nurse who is she really enjoys it, because it reminds her of her days in the Navy, and I let her run the support routine. So part of the art of the support is a very carefully negotiated exchange of control. Autonomy means that I pick what I do and how I'm going to do it. Autonomy is like being the captain of the ship. I'm picking the destination. But when it comes to my routines, I need somebody to take control and to get me through the routine and guide me to the destination. A little bit like how the captain has a helmsman who does the steering. So her background and her very clear, very direct communication is very useful. So she started shielding 2 and a bit weeks before the lockdown anyway, because she had shingles. So she was already infectious. And in fact, her infectiousness might have saved her because everyone's been leaving her alone for a very long time. That was one of my support network. And then the other part of my support network is Ollie, who you may have met in the past, who does a lot of support for me for podcasts and stuff. He lives with a nurse. So the transmission risk is quite high. When we first did the lockdown, I have friends who live over the road. So the friends just kind of started folding in and doing the support stuff. Essentially, what we did is we exchanged control for autonomy. Whilst they could do meals and help me with support, I didn't really have any control over that. So rather than having someone come to my place, follow my routine that I've designed and I've got a say in, we would walk across the road to them and eat dinner with them, which was great. And it lasted about a week until I completely ran out of spoons. Spoons are a unit of energy. And in the past, on a good day, I got 8 to 10 of them. And everything I do takes spoons. So crossing the road, getting somewhere safely, specifically transitions, changing between things, starting, stopping, that sort of stuff. And what had happened was I lost my routines, which means I lost my base stability, which meant that I'd sleep for, let's say, 12 to 14 hours, and I'd wake up with 3 or 4 spoons, not 8 spoons. So suddenly getting simply to the end of the day being awake and able to walk was a struggle because the energy was just gone. And that was very tricky. My speech started to get affected. So I was starting to rely more on computer-assisted communication, a little bit of sign language. And what we knew we had to do is we had to stabilize by making things as simple and straightforward as possible. So that started to stabilize it. And then over about 2.5 weeks, we started to get the spoons back. So then we started just adding a little bit more in every day with that support from friends happening in my own flat.
One quick question, which is more information for our listeners, which is you refer to we all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, because you're talking about Lion, aren't you?
I am referring to Lion, yes, of course.
Can you just explain Lion to everybody? Because, I mean, I've been privileged to meet you and I know what the story is, but many don't.
On my lap is my friend Lion. So Lion goes everywhere with me and has done for decades, which is a slightly weird thing to say as I'm only 30. But he's been with me a very long time. And he is the consistency that comes to every environment. He smells the same. He sits in my lap. If people really annoy him, they might get battered around the head with a lion. He's good to hide behind. He's part of my identity, part of who I am. In fact, most people know me as Jamie and Lion, which got really complicated when I ran a company and people were writing checks to Jamie and Lion. So that's Lion. And yeah, when I refer to we, I tend to refer to Lion and me because in a way, Lion is my primary carer. But I'm also his primary supplier of antelope, so it's kind of a good two-way relationship.
The bit I wanted to ask, you said, I read your tweet and you'll say, I had 13 hours sleep and I feel so much better for it. I have 13 hours sleep and put myself through a guilt trip of thinking I should be getting up a lot quicker. Now, the bit I was really intrigued, you're saying by the end of your day, your communication might start to not be as strong or as clear. My question is does your head start to get exhausted as well? So it's not only you can't say it, but your thinking is muddled as well?
Exactly. It all turns into a vague pile of muddle and confusion, and it can actually get really frustrating because take for example a few days ago, which is the last time I had a real big speech problem. I'd slept very badly because, talking of a shutdown thing, I've been using the same fabric softener for 13 years and it was unavailable, so we picked a different fabric softener. That turned out to be a really big mistake. Probably should have just done with no fabric softener at all. So I had a night and I slept very, very badly. So rather than waking up with 6 spoons, I woke up with like 1 spoon. Then I tried to, generally speaking, if I wake up with no spoons, I try and get to the end of the day with the spoons that I've got so that I don't break my sleep cycle. That didn't work. So by the end of the day, I was doing a mix of sign language and speech. And the frustration is I start losing the names of things. A little bit like when people have dementia, actually. So I can't know the word that I want. I know the thing. I can point at it. I can describe it. I can say the flap for the small tiger. But when I sign to somebody the flap for the small tiger, they have no idea what I'm talking about. Or if I use AAC, so that clarity of language goes away, and that can get deeply frustrated. And then the frustration of being unable to communicate in turn makes my communication worse. So when I get to that point, I've learned to say to myself, don't panic. Communication will come back in the future. Stop. Go have a sleep. Go cuddle Lion. Go listen to an audiobook. And don't be scared, because it's the fear. Oh my God, my voice is gone. Will it ever come back? I think the longest period I've been without speech is 17 and a half months. So there was always that little fear that this is it. This is my speech gone. Will it ever come back? And reminding myself, grounding myself and going, well, it's come back 27 times before, so it's probably going to come back for a 28th time.
I think what you tweet about is when I mention those hours, you almost give permission. You give yourself permission. I think you give other people permission. It has been different. You said certain things are the same because of social distancing since you existed. Have there been any elements that you thought this is great, or things that you want to transfer into the life after COVID-19?
This has actually been one of our design criteria. In many ways, all of my routines collapsing was useful, because there's been several routines that aren't helpful, but I've had them for so long that they weren't breakable. So, for example, I've eaten the same pasta meal that I stopped liking about a year and a half ago, pretty much every day for 5 years. And it was no longer available. So we had to change. We had to just go through the pain of changing my main meal. Now I'm eating a wider variety of things. On top of that, we're allowed outside each day for exercise. And the reality for me is that going outside and being safe has always been more limited by my energy than necessarily by rules. But I've established a little cycle route. For the last year, I've been going to Bike Park Wales in Wales. It's the only place in the world where my brain stops, where for a moment I'm entirely in the moment, flowing down the hill, going off the jumps, going off the drops. The whole world floating along beneath me. It's the most amazing feeling. And I believe that the only place I could get that was Wales, because the tracks near me are awful. But it turns out that if I change the bike I've got and I build myself a new bike out of spare parts, I can get that feeling locally. So I've discovered something useful, and suddenly I'm much more keen to go riding locally. So rather than build myself a routine for lockdown, this is now my routine. And when lockdown goes away, we'll just change who happens to be providing the care. And that way, I'm also decoupled from other people deciding when routine finishes. Because otherwise, if other people decide when lockdown finishes and that's going to really affect my life, that's really scary. But if I've taken the control and said, this is my routine going forward, I'm in control.
We are, I'm afraid, going to have to draw this to a close, Jamie. But as always, it's such a pleasure to listen to you and to be part of your experience, or at least get some sense of how you're trying to manage this difficult situation. And I think it's great that we end on a positive note. Actually, some good comes out of this.
Yeah.
Can we thank you so much, Jamie? Brilliant.
As Phil said, always a delight, and thank you for your articulate summary as well as your Twitter feed. I love it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamie.
It comes to the comedy section of the show. Very happy to say hello to a friend, a very dear friend. He's also an ace stand-up, becoming more and more of a writer and occasional actor, Lawrence Clark. Hi there, Lawrence.
Hi.
Hiya, Lawrence.
How has life been for you?
Weird. I've not been outdoors now for, get on for 5 weeks. I saw the way the wind was going, and I decided to just not go out, basically.
Well, I've seen some people with cerebral palsy actually did get this sort of 12-week shielding thing. And I mean, are you self-isolating because of a health reason?
Well, I think I am, but the NHS disagrees, because I've got cerebral palsy, I've got asthma, which I would say was severe asthma, although apparently not, because all I want basically is to get my bloody food from Sainsbury's delivered. That's all I want. We paid for a pass, so we've been getting it delivered for years, and all of a sudden, in order to get my groceries, I have to be declared extremely vulnerable. I've been on the website, I filled it all in, and I got an email back to say, no, I'm not. For years I've fought against this label of vulnerable, and the one time I actually want the bloody thing, I'm now not vulnerable.
That's absurd, isn't it? It's kind of really weird. And I hope they sort that out for you. That's not good.
I tell my wife she's got cerebral palsy. She's done it as well. She's been told she's up for either. So neither of us.
Can't they multiply it? I mean, if there's two of you, doesn't that count more? You've got two cerebral palsy people together. Isn't that worth more than one?
You would think in a kind of top trumps kind of way. But no, all we want is to get on the bloody priority list for Sainsbury's.
For years, we fought against the accidental hierarchy of disability. For once, we really want it now.
Yeah. Well, when you actually want it, you can't get it. It works against you.
You have two children, two boys. How is life at home with them?
Hell.
Whoa.
I'm still trying to get some work done as well, some writing. And I've got to homeschool them. I've really started to emphasise with my kids' teachers more and more. Because, if I don't stand over them, certainly the older one, he doesn't do it. With the younger one, I have to sit with him. He's only 8. And that's not so bad. So we do a bit of maths in the morning, then some reading in the middle of the day, and then English, and the school sent stuff for them to do. But with my older one, he's like 15 now, so he just disappears to his room, and I've no idea what he does, but at the end of the day, I ask him to show me what he's done, and it's not he hasn't got my work gene, put it that way.
That's really tough. That empathy that parents have finally got about being teachers is huge.
I've actually been doing quite a lot of workshops on Zoom over the past few weeks, and they're great. I think one of the good things about this crisis is people have got a lot more okay with this technology now. But yesterday, I spotted on little Tom's, my older son, all his work is online. I noticed the music teacher said he's going to do a lesson on Zoom next week, which I was like, great, yeah. I took great pleasure in telling him that.
You mentioned that people are getting to know the tech. That's a good thing. Is there anything else that you think has been a good thing for you as Lawrence Clark through this period that you're going to kind of take away with you afterwards?
I've been writing script. It's kind of things that I meant to do. Like my agent was asking me for a spec script for about 2 years, and I've finally written one because I've used time wisely. I hope. I've also finished my play, which was meant to be on in 10th of May, and literally the day of the auditions, which I think was the 17th of March, was when things really kicked off. And we had to just pack it all in. I don't know what's going to happen. We're hopefully going to be able to stage it again later in the year. But I've already done about 60-70% of the work. So I just thought, well, I should carry on and finish the script. I found it positive in that things that I've been meaning to do and putting off, I have finally done.
Made me feel a bit guilty. I haven't learned German.
All those hours of watching this morning, Simon.
I've not actually. I'm always in bed. I miss that. That's too early.
Well, Lawrence, we'll have to, sadly, we'll have to draw this to a close, but it's nice to finish on a positive note that you're churning scripts out, and that when, we'll just have to keep an eye open for when the theatres start opening and you guys can get back out there and start entertaining us again.
Cheers, yeah.
And if we want to find out a bit more about you, best place, your website?
Basically, yeah, lawrenceclark.co.uk. On Facebook, I'm Lawrence Clark Comedian. On Twitter, I'm Lawrence_Clark.
You've done that before, haven't you?
I have.
Are they all Clarks without an E?
They are.
Yeah.
I'm Lawrence with a U, Anthony without an H, and Clark without an E.
And you're not the runner. We know that much.
No.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Getting towards the end of the show, you and I normally have a little wrap up and anything that's happening with us. Anything at your end?
Just a sad thing. Many of the people listening to us know I'm chair of the Research Institute for Disabled Consumers. We did the survey we talked about in a previous show. Very, very sadly, my vice chair, a man called David Lazarus, he died on April the 7th from the coronavirus. We didn't know, for the reasons that so many people don't know these things. You know, the news comes out way after the event. He was a very nice man, very supportive. He was very passionate about RIDC and what we were doing. He was a Chelsea fan like me. So we used to spend time talking about Chelsea. But I really valued his counsel, and he was a very, very good friend to me. So I think that's very sad. And if by any chance anyone who knows David is listening, they have my sympathies. He was a good chap.
Yeah, I don't know David, but my thoughts are with him and his family and friends. It's so sad. I think this end may be quite a serious one. We're not got our usual banter. On Sunday. I went to throw the rubbish out. And then I went to the end of I've got a car park where my flat is. And at the very end, you can get the sun's before it goes around the building. And I got there and I thought, I'll just text on my phone or have a look at my phone and get some sunshine. And then a neighbor had already laid out one of those sort of yoga mats, and he came back with a couple of beers and his mobile phone and a book. And then we started chatting, keeping our distance. And about 10, 15 minutes into it, this had gone beyond, hey, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. It was a proper chat. And I suddenly thought, oh, and I got in and I checked. This was the first human being that I've spoken to in person for more than, a transaction or buying some milk for 4 weeks and 2 days.
Blimey. I've said this before. You have a lovely flat. It's a really, really nice flat. Anybody's ever been to it is in awe of it. But you don't have garden. You don't have the access that I've got here. I've also got Sue, my wife, here. So we jibber jabber all the time. And I've often thought about you in that context because, it's something very poignant about having to go in the car park to get a bit of sun and some human contact. But it does sound like it was a nice moment.
I didn't mean to get the human contact. I wanted a bit of sunshine. And we have a communal garden that you can use as well. It was nice. Only when I thought about, oh my goodness, I haven't done this for a while. That was why. It was perfectly pleasant.
Because we're Zooming and things like that all the time, it's kind of in a way replaced some of that, hasn't it?
But it hasn't, and it can't.
No, that's the point, though. It hasn't. It's a mask.
There's a philosopher chap, Nigel Warburton, who I follow on Twitter, and he said, has anyone got a plausible theory why web calls are so draining? And I'm finding them exhausting. So, and the psychologist is saying there's so many visual clues that you get when you have a conversation, you absorb them naturally. Also, you don't spend half your time looking at yourself when you're with someone else.
No, that's very true, actually, isn't it?
So
you're also looking at other people.
Yeah,
you're listening. You're listening to the person you're with, but you're also taking in the other people and what they're doing and saying.
I'm actually jumping back to audio calls. I'm going to start switching them back because it's too many video calls. The other bit I wanted to mention, someone reflected to us on the show saying, you and Phil, you work from home. This is not unfamiliar, the setup, but were we missing something in that the biggest difficulty for people is of all our freedom being taken away and all the restrictions on our life. So we can't choose what we do anymore. Now, I pushed back a little bit and sort of said, well, do you think that's because we have disabilities? We're kind of used to that. It's something we talked about with Jamie and Lion, that we do have restrictions on life because the world is not set up for us. But I don't know. Is that the biggest issue, the things we're being denied?
I know what I miss that fits into that kind of conversation. I miss the ability to just do something on the spur of the moment, i.e., I've suddenly realized I need a new plug for the sink, or I'm making it up a bit, but in the car, off to B&Q, boom, 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 sorted, en route back, have a bacon sandwich at the cafe. You know, it's the impromptu stuff. Everything we do is planned. It's in the diary. This is in the diary. What we're doing now is in the diary. That ability to just go out, you know, we're able, Sue and I take the dog for a walk, and so we're able to go out, but we're not talking to anybody. We're not meeting anybody. And the purpose is to take the dog for a walk. That's the purpose. Although obviously we're outside, which is lovely. I don't know. I did reflect the other day when I got polio when I was a child, very small child. I spent 3 years in hospital in the same bed, in the same ward, seeing the same people every single day for 3 years. Now, I don't, to be frank, remember much about it, if I'm honest. But I thought, how the hell did I survive that? I've been in for a month. I think the other point you made, though, Simon, that's really important for me and you is that we're used to doing this. This is not unusual. It is unusual to go 4 weeks and not have a conversation with another person in the flesh. That is unusual.
I felt I was getting a bit of a muffin top, which is where your stomach overlays your elasticated waist trousers. And I thought, oh no, I'm eating so much rubbish and all this stuff. And I weighed myself, and I am 5 pounds lighter than when this started.
Goodness me.
And I've worked out it's because I used to go out for dinner 3 times a week, and I don't do that anymore. I'm just eating what I cook, and that's what it is. So I'm actually losing weight, saving money, losing weight, but I'm missing that social part.
Yeah.
So the person who was saying it's for the restrictions, I get that. We live with restrictions. I don't want to overplay it, but you're right. Even spontaneity is gone.
There used to be a group I remember many years ago, before we had all this tech and stuff. They were called the Respinauts. They were people who were in iron lungs, not the modern things we've got now. They were in this state. They lived their lives inside this breathing machine, and they somehow got together and wrote. It was a magazine, and they did this way before the internet and all that kind of stuff, but they never ever went anywhere. That's where they were. Their life surrounded the room they were in. And I suppose the experience of disability, you and I are not in that league, let's be honest. And we're not in the league of some of the people we know who currently couldn't go out even if they wanted to, or were allowed to. So I think we should keep it in perspective. I'm also very, very struck by the worry that what's going on for people that haven't got access to the internet or social media, or, how are they doing? Because at least you and I can do this.
Is that Aunt Flossie or Aunt Flo again?
Oh, it's yes. I've forgotten her name, haven't I?
Whenever we did training or whenever we were doing consultancy.
Betty. Her name was always Betty.
It wasn't.
Oh, I'm sure it was. Did you have a daughter called Betty?
It was your name, but we'd always have what about Aunt Flossie in the 19th floor in her apartment
in Tower Hamlets? Yeah.
And do not forget her. She has needs. And there we are. You've actually turned into that person now.
I've turned into that person and forgotten what her name was.
But it's real, and that is about there's a lot of stuff going on with kids and those who may not have broadband at home or laptops and all that sort of stuff. We're going to digress. We should stop. Thank you so much for listening. We're getting some feedback, some a bit offline, and we're happy with that. Tell us what you think. Are we doing too much, too little? Bit more of that, bit less of that, whatever you think. If you want to get hold of us on social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and email.
And our email address is thephilandssimonshow@gmail.com.
Giving you a heads up, in future shows, we have John the Gardener coming on. 2 or 3 people I know who are very excited about that. So if you've got questions for John the Gardener, he is a disabled man himself, but he's a professional gardener. And Rosie Jones, who is all over television, all over Radio 4. She's going to come on and do a comedy spot, and I'm beyond thrilled about that. So yeah,
Things to look forward to, which is always nice.
thank you very much for listening. We'll be back soon.
Yes, take care, everybody.